interesting. So I wanted to share it with you. Of course, you know I'm in the modeling aspect of this, love models. And so far, I've been dealing with filament and resin 3D printing as a tool to use. And now I've come across something else. I don't know how to get into it, but it's fantastic. I brought an example of it. Where is it? Oh, here it is. I'm going to pass it around after a while, but I don't want to do that right now because I want to say what I got to say and then I'll pass it around. It is absolutely detailed to the nth degree. Never seen anything like it before. I'm not exactly sure what the process is, but I think that it's very similar to the process that they use in making microchips. Whereas in most printing, you add material to represent what you want to end up with, like if it's a filament printer or a resin printer. This technique starts out with a solid object, takes away everything that you don't want. Now, in a comparison, the most detailed stuff that I'm aware of so far is some of the brass things that you can buy. You know, the highly detailed engines and so forth that cost $1,000 or whatever. Well, this is like way above that. I think, I'm not positive of this, but I think that most of those brass models are cast. I think those pieces are actually cast. They're not printed. And any rate, I'm going to diverge just a minute here. I tried to get something to relate to for you before I go any further, and that is that computer chips have been around since the 50s. The circuitry involved in making a computer chip is fairly simple. All this stuff that they talk about doing has nothing to do with the circuitry. Circuitry's simple. It's the ability to be able to make the circuitry. That's where the problem is. That's what AMD and other companies used to fight one another. Whoever could scribe the finest line would win. And they would go to the next level of chip. When we started making computer chips, all memory is made up of a few basic things. You have diodes, triodes, capacitors, resistors, all that's wired together, and you make a memory module, I call it. Alright, now, when they started doing this back in the beginning, I used to run a UNIVAC 1005 in the Army. UNIVAC 1001 looked kind of like a small house trailer. Had doors on it. You walk in the door and you flip the lights on, and there were shelves around the wall that had all the components on it. And these components were made. Memory back then was made by ladies that would sit at a table with a soldering gun and solder together these components. And when they would get through, they'd have this massive stuff, and they'd end up with something like 1/4 of a K in size. I know that my UNIVAC 1005, which was a fairly sophisticated computer, had a total memory of 4K.
Yep, 4K.
Yep. And when I got back to the States after being in the Army, I built Warrington Associates in Birmingham. They did international banking. Their modem was about the size of this room. The hard drives looked like a washing machine. You open up the top and pull out the drums. High-speed tape drives that were so fast that they didn't even have spindles for the tape to run on. They ran on columns of air. At any rate, the main program for that building had 1 megabyte, and it cost over $1 million. Now, let me get away from that a little bit. I tried to think of something that would put size in perspective. So I finally figured out what it is. If you took a small human hair, a fine human hair, cut it crossways, stood it up on the end, you'd have a little table, a little round surface on top. That would represent somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1/1,000,000th of a square inch. That's small. Now, I started doing some calculations to figure out in a 64 gigabyte thumb drive, how many of those honest to goodness real physical components have they stuffed on that little table that are wired up to one another and so forth. Well, it turns out that in that little space there, cross section of human hair, there's 2.8 million physical components that are there. It's not magic, these are actual physical components that are wired up. That's the reason the machines that make these things are so rare. Only like 1 or 2 companies in the world can have the technology to even make the manufacturing process. Thank goodness we're starting to do some of that in the United States, so we won't be so dependent on other countries. Now, I'll get away from that a little bit. When they make these microchips, they use essentially the same process in what I'm fixing to show y'all in just a minute. They take a disc that's about 8 inches in diameter, and they put a little teeny little drop of something in the middle of it and spin it real fast, and it spreads out and puts a real thin layer of something, whatever they're using at the time. They use different stuff, they layered up. And then they go in with photographic processes, lasers and other photographic processes, and they take away what they don't want to remain. And that's the way they build the microchips. Okay, now, this thing that I'm fixing to pass around is a model of a grocery cart like you find at Walmart. I got this accidentally. I was dealing with a company on some stuff that I was buying from my model that I'm making of the depot, and they sent this as an advertisement, hoping that I would become interested in buying some stuff from them. It took me about 2 hours to put this together. This little model of a grocery cart is totally HO scale. When you look at it, all the wires are scaled, the little wires that are in the cart, everything is to scale, and it's made out of stainless steel. Now, that is something. I put something in the cart because I didn't want it to be empty. I guess you could say this looks like maybe a little piece of plywood, maybe a ceiling tile, and some PVC pipe, some fittings and stuff. I'm gonna have this little cart in the shipping area of the depot. You know, my model's in the 50s, and it has a lot of freight there. Now, a cart probably wouldn't be back there, but I'm gonna put it in there because I want a way of giving it to the public, and it'll go fit in there as well as anything else, I guess. Now I'm gonna pass this around for you to look at. You don't have to be overly delicate. There's upside down. I spent 30 minutes trying to figure out how to bring it and show it to you. I got it glued down to the bottom of that cup with a little teeny little piece of adhesive that came out of carpet double-sided tape. It's the stickiest stuff you've ever seen in your life. And I cut a little piece about 1/2 inch square and managed after 3 or 4 tries to get it in the bottom of the cup, and then I took a pair of tweezers and mounted the little model in there. So at any rate, that's the end of that. I find that interesting because modeling is just getting more and more detailed. Picture, incidentally, while he's got this up, I sure am glad I'm not there. I've been looking at that picture, and that appears to be a prepared area for people to climb on.
Yeah.
But that's El Capitan.
Okay, yeah. I know, but it's not natural. That's a place I think that those 4 lines, that look like 4 lifelines coming down that they stay hooked to. So those folks are not in ultimate danger. For a climber, that would be a nice experience. That's not me, incidentally.
Oh, fair enough.
I have a hard time just walking. Don't laugh at me, I'm sensitive.
So, Vaughn,
I don't know, these are fracture lines as far as I know. Look at this one.
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, there's a lot of footholds and handholds. And when you get to the top, you throw yourself off the top with your parachute. Yeah.
That's the dangerous
Yeah.
part.
Quick way down.
As long as you're going up and you're on a lifeline, you can't get hurt.
That's true.
That's kind of like with
Cliff.
in cleaning the house. I used to have a friend that used to tell me, he said, no need throwing
Come
away
out of an
perfectly good
airplane
dirt.
15-ton.
Turn out some nice models.
Yeah.
Incidentally, when I got that little cart, it was flat. I said it took me 2 hours to put it together. That was just to fold it up into place because it didn't want to do exactly what I wanted it to. And I had to glue it in a spot or two, and that's something. I was kind of impressed. Even my little
That is,
PVC tubing looks
But
really
it's,
impressive.
it's very impressive. There's a place over in Scotland, PPD, that does this type of stuff. At very, very reasonable rates.
Oh yeah, I would imagine it cost them, when they get set up and have the machine and everything, probably would cost them more than 50 cents to make one of
But
those.
stainless steel, is the progression from brass. You use brass to so much, and then you use stainless steel, and you go even smaller.
Well, if you'll notice on that model, even the handle, where you hold onto the cart, is in more than one diameter, like it is in reality.
Yep.
so are you saying that thing was hogged out of a solid chunk of stainless steel?
No,
Just took
no,
away?
no. It started out with a
Flat.
Oh, flat.
flat piece
I got you.
and took away what they didn't need, and then you fold it up.
Most of your brass diesels are flat, folded up, and
Well, that's about it. That's all I know. That's a nice little turnout today.